Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Basketball Bulletin. My name is Trevor Lane. It is almost NBA trade season. Well, it really is trade season already, but almost the trade deadline coming up on February 6th. We got a lot of trade-related stuff to talk about and other things going on around the NBA. Happy to see those of you who are able to join us live here. We'll be taking some of your questions and comments as we touch upon some of our big topics for the day, including Bruce Brown, a big-time update there that have some teams chomping at the bit, hoping that he winds up out there on the market. Bradley Beal, maybe a suitor found for him. We'll see. We'll talk a little bit about that. The Heat seem to be ramping up their efforts to actually move on from Jimmy Butler. We'll get into that as well. My Lakers, now LeBron James kind of calling them out, saying they have no margin for error. We'll talk about that too, as well as a number of other things. Joining me is Donnie Freeman. Donnie, how you doing?
Doing good, man. How you doing?
Hanging in there right now. Happy to be here today. And what a great day. I mean, Martin Luther King Day. So we've got obviously the celebrations for that. We've got basketball on already. We've got 3 games going on right now as we're talking. 1 game already in the books, and it's the Hornets with the upset win over the Mavs in this one. But Donnie, I don't know if you saw, but the guy that we were talking about the other day on the trade market, Daniel Gafford, he put up 31 points, 15 boards, and 7 blocks. Coincidence? I think not. Daniel Gafford heard those rumors and he said, no. Don't trade me. Don't trade me.
Yeah, he hit him with that trade that. No. The amnesty that, but trade that.
So funny.
Yeah, I mean, man, we saw some big performances recently. Like even like Mark Williams has been going crazy ever since he's taken over like sole responsibility of that spot. And Gafford, we talked about it previously. I think the asking price is going to be kind of high for him. I don't know. They want wing defense, but it's not going to be like a lower tier wing defender. They're going to want somebody that's really good.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. I really think in the Mavs' minds, we'll move Daniel Gafford if we're getting Herb Jones.
Yeah, but
and I don't think they're getting Herb Jones, but otherwise I don't think they're going to actually move on.
But somebody like that, I think Herb is like the perfect one because he's on basically like a similar salary number too. Yeah. And so it kind of just works probably if you put it in the machine. But yeah, I think most teams, if they could, would love to have Herb Jones, but they're not going to get him. And then he's hurt anyway. So
right. Exactly. But just funny that we had Daniel Gafford have this blow-up performance. All right, before we get into some of our news topics here, D-Rock said lost access to Twitter last week. Any Nets updates? I mean, just that they're driving a hard bargain right now on Cam Johnson, as they should. They know a lot of teams see him as a piece that they can plug and play, that he'd be a nice fit. So the word going around is that they want 2 first-round picks in exchange for Cam Johnson. And so far, teams are not willing to meet that asking price, but they're going to try to hold firm going up to the trade deadline, and we'll see if something gets done there. But he's been named, in fact, several execs recently named him as the player most likely to be on the move at the trade deadline. The question is just, do the Nets actually get their asking price, which is pretty steep at 2 firsts for him?
Yeah, I mean, I respect the hustle with them trying to get the 2 first, and I understand why they would ask for that. I just don't know that it's going to happen. Not 2 genuine first-round picks, but they seem content with pushing this up against the wall for the deadline and going until the last hour and seeing what they can do. So hopefully it works out.
Yeah, we'll see how things work out for them and if they can get that done. Of course, they can also argue too, hey, we're losing enough games with Cam Johnson on the team already. We don't need to get him off the roster in order to. We can lose with him. Is kind of the message from Brooklyn right now, which takes away some of their incentive to move on from him currently. So right now, I mean, that's what they're telling everybody. Like, hey, we've moved enough pieces. We moved Finney Smith. We moved Dennis Schroeder. We're going to lose plenty of games as is. We don't have to get him off the roster in order to lose. It's the kind of backwards world of NBA tanking, right? But it is what it is.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like, I get it, and that's what they should be doing, but just saying it out loud is kind of shameless. But okay.
Yeah.
But like, it just sounds weird. Like, we're losing enough. Don't worry, we're fine. But yeah,
we're good. We're losing just as much as we want. Right.
We got this in the bag. We're losing all the games we want. I thought in the last time I watched them was the Laker game. I thought there was some weird decisions that they made, and I was watching another podcast, and they were saying that there was some like shadow tanking going on with some substitutions or matchups and stuff like that. And I was like, man, that's kind of crazy when you think about it. But that's what they should be doing, I guess.
There were some choices that were made there. There were some choices where you went, okay, well,
Have been happy about winning that game on that last shot. Would they have been happy about that?
I'm sure the players on the team would have been, but
Yeah.
the front office, maybe not so much. I mean, really, isn't that the ideal outcome for a tanking team?
Yeah.
To lose every game by one?
Yeah, absolutely. You get a
Anyway.
fun, good, competitive game. You just lose. Perfect.
Yep. That's what you're looking for. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Bradley Beal situation. Suddenly, the Milwaukee Bucks have been named maybe as a landing spot for Bradley Beal, saying rather than Jimmy Butler, the Bucks could go after Beal. This was from the Mark Stein Substack. The Bucks are more likely to show interest in acquiring Beal from the Suns. They could be part of a transaction that ultimately sends Butler to Phoenix, or it could be a separate deal entirely. And the Bucks did show interest in Beal when he was a member of the Washington Wizards. Essentially, in order to do this, the Bucks would have to clear Pat Connaughton off of their books, the Bucks books, so that they could aggregate salaries in a trade. Otherwise, they couldn't get there for Bradley Beal. But if you had to do something, let's say they clear Pat Connaughton off the books. Let's say that Detroit is willing to, and that's the primary dumping ground team right now. Whether or not they'll actually do it, we'll see. The Pistons may be in win now mode. But if you're the Bucks and you can turn Chris Middleton and a few other salaries into Bradley Beal, does that make them better? And does that make it worth dealing with the no trade clause?
What salaries? Because that's a lot of money to try to aggregate. I think that matters.
Sure. I mean, we're talking Chris Middleton. We're talking, I mean, if you did Chris Middleton and Brooke Lopez, that has you there money wise. Now, that's a lot to give up in terms of your rotation, but you could also do something around Middleton, Bobby Portis, stack another contract up there. But again, your first move has to be to get Pat Connaughton off your books, drop below the second tier apron so you can stack up salaries in a trade.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of funky personally. I think offensively also that backcourt could work. I just think it's going to get blitzed on the other side. And it's going to put a lot of pressure on guys like Giannis, like pretty much only Giannis to make up for it. There's some other guys here that can defend a bit, but you're also getting rid of probably Brooke. I don't know that I like that for them personally.
Yeah, I mean, it
seems kind of redundant again to me. Like, I don't think they need that.
I think conceptually, right? If we step back, forget about what talent is actually available. If you have Giannis and you have Dame, one of the things that's going to be important, first of all, just to open up space for Giannis, it's that your bigs that you're going to have on the team need to be able to shoot. Well, they check those boxes. They got Bobby Portis, they got Brooke Lopez, two of the better shooting bigs. Great, right? But then you need probably at least a secondary ball handler, and that to a degree can be Chris Middleton, but he's getting a little long in the tooth, and he's had some injury history, so maybe there's a concern there. But then when we talk about the two, conceptually, if you're going to put a shooting guard next to Damian Lillard, you'd ideally want it to be a Danny Green 3-and-D archetype, right? That type of two is what you're looking for, and that's not what Bradley Beal is as all. It's one of the problems with the Suns. So Bradley Beal is talented. Maybe you could get him cheaper than another equal talent because of his contract situation, because he has the no trade clause. But I look at this and I think, is this really the piece that the Bucks need to put them to the next level? I don't see that for Milwaukee.
Yeah, it seems almost lateral to me personally. Maybe Bucks fans that consistently keep up with the team would feel otherwise, because I see a lot of fans out on some of these guys, and yeah, it definitely makes sense. But I think they've played much better recently, and they've elevated themselves to a top 4 seed last time I saw, and I think that's pretty lateral. I don't know that that's the player that they need, considering the salary number. Like, it'd be one thing if he had a $30 million player option, you know, but or no trade option as well. But he's on that 50 million where you are forced to put together rotation pieces, which is just hard to do.
I mean, you look at the deal, it's 50 million this season, 53 million next season, 57 million on a player option, which he's definitely picking that up. I mean, and on top of that, I don't love a Beal Lillard backcourt can score the hell out of the basketball. There's no question, but can you stop anybody? Yeah. And that would be a problem, especially if you're having to trade, one of your bigs too, one of your rim protectors has got to go out in order to make it happen. It just gets tough to do that. And yeah, as 2 Cents says, Beal would still be stuck in the same role on the Bucks. Yeah, he'd be the third guy again, And we know he's at his best with the ball in his hands and scoring the basketball. I don't understand it from the Milwaukee side. Like, why do you want to sign up to have the same problems that Phoenix has right now and still have to deal with a no trade clause? It just doesn't make sense. And that begs the question: does Bradley Beal even want to go to the Bucks? Because if the answer is no, then this is all for naught.
Well, if they're in a deal with Jimmy Butler, they need to be taking Jimmy Butler back.
They need to be getting Jimmy Butler. Jimmy at least makes sense for them, talent-wise. But I don't. And Jimmy may be okay with going to Milwaukee, but if the Bucks aren't willing to give him that next big contract, maybe Jimmy would also prefer to go to Phoenix, where he thinks he is going to get that. It all comes back to the money, Donnie. That's really what it all comes back to.
Yeah, that's true. I just think that that's just a weird spot for them to try to be in. At that point, to me, that almost strikes me as just making a deal just for the sake of making a deal. The Beal specific portion of it, that seems like just making a deal for the sake of making a deal, just sake for shaking things up. And I do think, again, like you said, their offense would be pretty good on the perimeter. It's just they wouldn't be able to stop anybody, and I don't know if they have enough players that excel on the defensive side of the ball to really make the push they'd be trying to put to make in the playoffs as well. And I think that does matter. And I also don't know that they have the quality front court depth, if they're going to be giving up some of those pieces too.
Yeah.
So that's where it's tricky. I just don't know that I like that move. And then again, Beal specifically would again also be in the same spot like Two Cents was saying. That's another element to this too. KD and Giannis are very different players,
sure.
As is Book and Lillard. But regardless, he's still going to be in a spot where he's semi-redundant with the guard, and then also going to be in a position where he's going to be the third guy out there. And does that work for him? It's not been proven to work yet for him.
I mean, the positive would be you could have one of Beal or Lillard on the floor at all times for the Bucks, which you would have a guard who can fill it up on the floor 48 minutes a night, which could be good, but there's still going to be overlap between Lillard and Beal's minutes. And then it's like, Don, I hate bringing everything back to the Lakers, but it's like a worse version of the Reeves D'Lo backcourt in terms of the amount of cap space that you're taking up and the amount that you're going all in that this is going to work, when both your guards would have similar deficiencies.
Yeah, it's much better talent-wise, but there are drawbacks.
Way better talent-wise, yeah.
Yeah, of course. I just wanted to, CYA for you on that.
Thank you. Before somebody shouts at me, like how are you comparing those two guys to those guys?
Yeah,
similar deficiencies. That's all.
Yeah, it's just the deficiency side of it, just in theory, the way that it would fit, but on a higher scale because you've got like $100 million tied up into these two guys. And for me personally, Lillard, like I said, and Devin are very different players, but I just can't see it working if it can't already work with what they're doing. Phoenix already has a system where they've got at least one of those guys on the court at all times, and it's still not been successful for them. So I just think that with the Bucks, you're putting a lot on Giannis, and I don't know that I like that.
All right.
Not that he can't shoulder it, by the way. He's Giannis. He could do it, but it's weird.
Beal's archetype is so hard to fit in other contending teams. One team I can see Beal fitting is the Detroit Pistons. Yeah, and the problem is he's making so much money. Like if you told me Beal was making $35 million, great. The Pistons could go. I mean, Jaden Ivey's got a broken leg. Go get Bradley Beal. Off you go. You've got another scorer next to Cade Cunningham. You got somebody who can handle the ball. Great. It just comes back to that no trade clause. But I'll tell you what though, if something like this could happen, with Jimmy going to Phoenix, Beal going to Milwaukee, pieces going to the Heat, that could be the biggest, most explosive trade we could perhaps come up with for the trade deadline, aside from something random hitting us like an RKO from out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's definitely, there's not even anything that's going to be close, I don't think, unless it's some crazy star trade, that we just didn't expect. So that one is just so outlandish, though. I don't see it happening. I don't think there's any chance of this happening personally.
Yeah,
it just seems so unrealistic to me. Just all the stuff, and like I said, for the Bucks, if you like him, that's great. I just feel like you should be in on Jimmy Butler if you're a part of a Jimmy Butler deal. Like, why do you need to offload salary and do all this stuff to get one of the guys in the deal that's moving, but not the other one? Why can't you just deal directly if that's the case?
Yep. Agree 100%. Agreed. All right, let's get into a few of our chat questions and comments here before we get to our next big topic. Michael said, "La passive, l'aggressive James has arrived." Trade. LeBron made it pretty clear. And we're going to talk about this, Donnie. We'll get into the big picture topic in just a moment. But yeah, LeBron made it pretty clear that that the Lakers don't have a margin for error right now. He's not wrong. But this is also like you can almost set your watch to it. Like this is the right time of year for LeBron to make these kind of comments with just weeks to go until the trade deadline.
Yeah, you're right. I'll always come back to the time where they weren't able to get, what was it, Kyrie, and it's just the maybe it's me. I always come back to that. Maybe it's me. If we end this deadline and there's not like a big trade, do we get maybe it's me part 2? Like
we would just get some kind of emoji that would be perfectly placed.
Yeah. But no, it's time, and I actually don't really mind him doing it, if I'm being honest. I feel like they're kind of just sitting on their hands, twiddling their thumbs, whatever, just waiting, talking about reevaluating the roster, seeing how these players look that are going to come back eventually healthy. I understand why they'd be frustrated if they've been wanting trades for so long, especially if there were promises prior.
If you are Rob Pelinka, does this make your job more difficult though? Right? I mean, like if I'm an opposing GM and I'm talking to Rob Pelinka, I'm taking a screenshot of LeBron's quote and texting it to him and saying the price just went up.
Yeah. Well, part of that's also why I think Rob is going to just like try to play the field and make everybody happy and go. He's going to go like, okay, Jeannie, I'm not going to give up any first round picks. LeBron, guess what? I made a trade for you. We got X player. All right. Everything's perfect. It's not going to be a crazy deal. I'm not going to give out any of my first. We're going to keep this going. We're going to kick the can down the road again for the 5th time. And everyone's going to be happy, I guess. That's what he's probably going for. But I mean, you'd have to hope that that's not the case with like the price going up, but I imagine it is. And I imagine that every time this happens, Rob is just like, God damn it. Why do you have to do that? I was on the 1-yard line for this trade, and now they're asking me for 3 more second-round picks.
No, he said, "Oh my, I was just about to get onto Space Mountain, and now I get this message. Come on." I mean, I think it doesn't make his job easier, but I also think LeBron's not wrong. Yeah. They don't have much of a margin for error. And let's remember, LeBron was just agreeing with what JJ Redick said as far as them not having much of a margin for error with this situation. Now, LeBron added in the bit about that's how the roster is constructed. Mm-hmm. But again, we knew this from the summertime. We knew this from back in the summer that the Lakers were not constructed properly, that they needed to make moves. They needed to shake some things up. And now, again, the pressure is on them to do something. LeBron did put pressure on them last year, though, and they also didn't do anything at the trade deadline. Yeah. They've already made one move and getting Dorian Finney-Smith, but clearly that's not enough.
Yeah, they've shown that it doesn't really faze them to the degree you would think it does. Probably mostly because of the way that previous trade went for them and how scared they are to make any other deals. The trade a few years ago. But yeah, they've shown that it's not the biggest deal to them. So if they're willing to, they'll just kick the can down the road again. Remember last year, because they hadn't made a trade until the Dorian Finney trade, they hadn't made a trade since that trade where they sent Westbrook out, basically 2 years. And you factor the offseason, in-season opportunities for trades, et cetera. It had been a long time. But remember last year when they were approaching, part of the reason they didn't make the trade is because they slid so heavily after that in-season tournament. And it felt like Rob was just like, this is a lost cause. And so they don't make any trades. But then Rob comes back with promises. Oh, in the offseason, we'll have these many picks.
We'll have
and all
3
this
picks.
Yep. And we'll be able to, use them there. And we're still looking like, hey, what's kind of going on with these picks you said you'd be trying to trade? Now you're saying we want guys, if we're going to give up both of these, we want guys that can be a part of sustained excellence going forward and all this stuff. He's kind of like always trying to play both sides, which is just, it's weird. I really feel like they should pick a direction, but it's not just that simple. Like we talked about on the live show last night, there's monetary business incentives as to why they wouldn't want to reset this stuff. And fans don't really care much about it, but that is the logistics of the business and why things are the way that they are. But from the player perspective, you'd hope that if you've got the guys that they have, they go all in instead of always 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Now, that being said, I do think in the trades he has made, Rui, Vando, those guys, even the DFS trade. I think those have all been good value trades for the most part.
Mhm.
There's some little stuff in there like opportunity cost, like the D'Lo one, which I think
Sure.
does matter. But I think he's found a way to pull a rabbit out of a hat with some of these trades he's pulled off.
Yeah, I mean, he's made a few good moves. I think when I step back, part of the issue, and two things here when you step back. Number one, it's how are they in this spot when they have two, what if worst top 15 players?
Yeah,
They shouldn't be in that spot to
absolutely.
begin with. They should be in the spot where, oh my gosh, they have to do something. Otherwise, they've got no shot. But part of that also is when we look at the value that's been passed down the line, it really hasn't been moved on well enough. You gave up a first in the Russell Westbrook trade, plus very valuable trade assets and players. Then you had to give up a first to get Russell Westbrook off your team. And you got Malik Beasley. He turned into nothing, right? Well, I guess technically he turned into the cap space used to have a full MLE to give to Gabe Vincent. Did that work out? Not necessarily. He's improving though. Gabe Vincent is. And then Jared Vanderbilt. We're not sure yet if he's a real person. We'll see if he's going to be in a basketball game this year or not. Maybe he will return in a few days. Hopefully, fingers crossed. And then D'Angelo Russell, you added 3 second-round picks to him to get Dorian Finney-Smith. So, like, for the Russell Westbrook trade, you've just continued to sacrifice. I mean, what is that? 2 first-round picks, multiple second-round picks that have gone down this road to turn essentially Russell Westbrook or the pieces they had, Kuzma, KCP, Montrezl Harrell, to turn that into Dorian Finney-Smith and Jared Vanderbilt, and I guess to a roundabout degree, Gabe Vincent. That's just not a great progression. It's not like he flipped a paperclip and kept trading it up and wound up turning it into a Lamborghini or something like that. If anything, he's traded down quite a bit to get to where they're at now.
You went down one branch, but there's multiple branches you can go down where it's
Absolutely.
like, the Mo Bamba, Pat Beverly into nothing,
God.
the THT into nothing, which is a part of that too. But Caruso opportunity cost there. Like, it's just, there's a lot of different ways you could go with this where like just they're paying the price for it because they rely on some guys that on an actual contender would be no better than like the 6th or 7th man.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how their team is.
All right, let's get back into the chat here. Let's go.
They've been arguing about trying to get Jeremy Grant, by the way.
Jeremy Grant. Oh boy. We'll talk about him in just a minute. Trinity, thoughts on a trade for the Spurs with the Knicks, who are probably going to be sellers at the deadline? Chris Paul. I mean, I don't know. The Spurs are going to be sellers at the deadline. Bassey and Wesley for Mitchell Robinson and a second. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting for the Spurs, I think, to put a big like Mitchell Robinson next to Wemby. I wouldn't hate that. I don't know if they're going to move on from Chris Paul, who's provided some really good veteran leadership, and the Spurs have been in the thick of things in the Western Conference. I do think the Spurs are going to be buyers. Are the Knicks? You're saying the Knicks are going to be sellers? If the Knicks are going to be sellers, it would be with Mitchell Robinson, but they also need to kind of replace Mitchell Robinson with another Mitchell Robinson. So, I mean, Bassey can do some stuff, but yeah, I don't know. Does Chris Paul make the Knicks significantly better? Because they're not trying to get worse right now. The Knicks are trying to improve and get better. I don't know if this is the move for them. From what we've seen, they would want to turn Mitchell Robinson into like a Jonas Valanciunas or so, another big that can take on that role and take some of the burden off of Cat.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, they could always use another veteran guard in their system, but that should not be their priority. The team definitely needs another backup big. Sometimes they get good minutes from Sims or Achua and stuff like that, but getting a more consistent backup big that they can rely on for 10 to 15 minutes, I think should be the goal. And, Tibbs already is playing his guys a crazy amount of minutes. I can't imagine what he's going to do in the playoffs. So even then, I kind of feel like you don't necessarily need to go all in on a trade in the first place.
Yeah.
You have time. Like we talked about it in the Mitchell video. It's still a little weird that it's like, oh, he's going to be coming back early February, but that's so close to the deadline and you have to make a decision. If your decision winds up being, you know what, we'll give him time as long as they're able to maintain health. And I know Cat's dealing with the injury as well right now. So it's maybe speeding up the timeline of what they need for another big right now. But if they can get healthy towards the end of the season, get out there and, play, I think that they'd be fine as is. I don't know that they have to make a deal.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. I think if they want to get up there with the Celtics and the Cavs, they're going to need to shake some things up. They need some more added to this team. I just don't know that this does it. And I also would still give them a puncher's chance in the playoffs against either of those teams. I think the Knicks have something, but is this the move to put them over the top? Like, are they missing a Chris Paul, turning a Mitchell Robinson into a Chris Paul? Is that enough? I don't know if that gets it done.
It would be an upgrade because who's their backup guard? Campaign?
Yeah.
It would be.
I definitely like Chris Paul more than Campaign, but you're weakening your backup center position in theory. But I think a lot of it comes down to: do you believe Mitchell Robinson's going to be healthy or not? And if you don't, then that pushes you maybe more towards the trade.
Well, if they know he's not coming back or don't think he's coming back, then that's totally different. I approached it from having optimism that he'll be able to play again, but that's totally different otherwise.
Yeah. JM, would you guys do this for the Lakers? Kessler and Murray. New Orleans get Rui, Gabe, Connect, and a 2029 first.
Kessler and Murray.
Okay. And then Utah gets JHS, a first, and unprotect 2027. Ooh. I mean, the word is Kessler. The Jazz want like 2 firsts for Kessler. So that would be, so I don't know that Utah does that. I don't know that New Orleans wants to take on any long-term salary, and at least Rui and Gabe both have salaries going into next year. If you told me the Lakers could do this, essentially converting both your draft assets plus unprotect 2027 into DeJounte Murray and Walker Kessler, I mean, that's probably enough for me to do it. Would you do it, Donnie? You're giving up Rui and Gabe. I guess the question is, how much better are... And Dalton's in there too. You're really going all in on this.
You're going in. That trade, you're giving everything up.
So if your team is DeJounte Murray, Austin Reeves, Dorian Finney-Smith, LeBron, AD, Walker Kessler, these are your main pieces, right? That's your 6 primary guys you're going to rely upon come playoffs. Then we can talk about who else, does Jared Vanderbilt come back? Is he in the mix as like a 7th guy? Where does Max Christie slot and other players? But is that team good enough?
I mean, sure. I think it's good enough. If you get MVP AD and LeBron is able to give you at least what he's currently giving you statistically, as an average, but ideally like just a tick above that, he's giving you 25, you need 27, 28. But to be fair, that's the case for most teams in the league. Most teams need their star players to take it up a level in the playoffs. So that would still be the case with this team. And I think that the West as a whole is largely matchup dependent. I've said that before, where any team can be got in the wrong matchup for the most part. I'm wondering if that's the case for like the Thunder, but otherwise I think, matchups do matter a lot. But I think that would be good enough, but it's not good enough to just go out there, roll out there and win without things lining up for you.
Yeah, that's what you would have. And that's going to be true, I think, of a lot of teams in the West is you have to get the right matchup. You have to get the right matchup right now. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Bruce Brown news that came out. Jake Fisher had this, I believe it was yesterday, that the Raptors, that should he not be traded, the Raptors are going to try very, very hard to trade Bruce Brown, but should he not be traded, he would be in great demand as a buyout candidate. That's from the Substack of Mark Stein and Jake Fisher. So $23 million, and I think what's happened is the Raptors are not seeing a market that's as strong as they were hoping it was going to be for Bruce Brown. A lot of that's been due to injury. He hasn't been able to get back on the court. He's only played, I think, 8 games or so right now and not shot the ball particularly well. I think there's questions about whether or not he's going to ever get back to being, or at least in the near future, get back to being that Denver Bruce Brown that everybody remembers from a few years back. So Jake Fisher throwing this out there, though, that he would be in great demand as a buyout candidate. Raptors fans certainly not thrilled to hear that. No team that's trying to sell a player wants to have anything brought up mentioning that player could get bought out, because that can kill value in an instant if teams feel like they could get the player for free. However, in this market, teams like, he mentions the Lakers, he mentions the Denver Nuggets, Brown's former team. Neither of those teams can actually sign Bruce Brown right now if they get bought out, because any team that's above the first-tier apron can't sign anybody making more than the MLE after they get bought out. And Bruce Brown is making $23 million, which is significantly more than that mid-level exception. So I would be surprised if Brown gets bought out, but if he does, Donnie, how quickly do the Thunder scoop him up?
Well, they absolutely should try to. He'd fit their ethos and he'd be a good pickup. But yeah, that's the tricky thing that we've talked about before. That he basically, if he gets bought out, can't go to any of these apron teams, and that's the new wrinkle that's here as part of the new CBA, and it really does hamstring the buyout market. And so, while Brown traditionally would be a guy that would have the flexibility to basically go anywhere. Maybe, he was interested in going to a team like the Lakers mentioned here or Denver, whatever. That's not an opportunity for him. So I don't know how likely that is. In fact, I wouldn't bet that this happens at all personally, just due to the lack of options where he could go. But if it does happen, the only team that's in the area where they could should scoop him up and would be able to make a run for it is the Thunder, because they're still cheap enough to where they're a contender this year and not dealing with the other ramifications of being an apron team.
Yeah. Like I've got a comment here. Bruce Brown is from Boston. He might as well go back home to the Celtics. They can't pick him up. They have too much money being spent. So this is going to be an interesting situation to watch, because the Raptors are trying to position themselves as the third team in a bunch of trades, saying, hey, you want to get Jimmy Butler somewhere? Cool. We've got expiring salaries that we can chip in as a third team for a price. Bruce Brown, we've got a number. I got Chris Boucher is another player that we could throw in. That alone is like $33 million in expiring salaries. So we'll be that team to help out. And the Raptors are making it well known around the NBA. They're ready to jump in as a third team. But there's a number of teams who have also said that we'll be a third team in a trade. We're not going to get Jimmy Butler, but we'll throw some pieces in to try to help someone else get him. Obviously, if we're getting what we want as well. But the Raptors are paying Bruce Brown $23 million this season so they can trade him. That's what they picked up that option for. So if they don't find a move for him and they ultimately wind up buying him out, that will be, I think, a big loss for the Raptors and for what they thought was going to happen with Bruce Brown's contract.
Yeah, definitely. That would absolutely be the worst case scenario, which is why I said I don't necessarily think that would happen with the Bruce Brown deal for him. But is there anywhere else? Do you think that maybe he would go to a lesser team just to get out there? I think there's actually a possibility, in fact, to get out there, show he's healthy, and raise his market going into the next season. Because I'm thinking about OKC. While that would be best for a championship, as it's basically the only real option he can have. I'm thinking about the fact he hasn't been amazing this year. He's played good in some spurts, but there are questions about how healthy he'd be. And I'm thinking about the fact that in the playoffs, it may be kind of hard for him to get minutes if they're fully healthy as well. So I'm not so sure that he would be, on the bench as an option, sure. But, I'm not so sure that he would be an active part of the rotation, especially immediately.
So I'm thinking, what about Detroit? What about Detroit as a landing spot for him? If he wants to get minutes, he wants to get opportunity, right? Because that's going to be something that'll be important to him. What about Detroit as a landing spot that's not OKC, that would still be able to pick him up on the buyout market if they wanted to? They've got cap space right now. They could potentially trade for him. I don't mind that either. The Pistons getting a veteran who's been on a deep playoff run before to add to a guy like a Tim Hardaway Jr. or something like that. And then you run with Bruce Brown being part of your team. For now, Bruce Brown gets to rehab his value a little bit, maybe make a little bit of a run in the Eastern Conference playoffs, as opposed to the Raptors, who are not in a position to make a run at all. And there you go.
Yeah, I like him there. That would definitely be, I think, a better case scenario, because you can kind of kill two birds with one stone. Because as I'm thinking about it, I do truly think that, he would try to be put in a position to where he can show that he is going to be good next year, because he wouldn't have a contract, if he's bought out. So in fact, he's going to be a free agent regardless this year. So it is what it is.
Yeah. I've got somebody asking, somebody saying Denver can get him. Yeah, the Spurs could get him. Denver can get him if they drop Zeke Naji. Yeah, but Zeke Naji has 3 years, I think, maybe 4 years left under contract. So if you can get Zeke Naji off your team, but you have to pay a team to take 4 years of his contract now. And that's the problem. Right now, teams are so allergic to any contracts that go beyond 1 year that, sure, the Nuggets, if they could drop below the first tier apron, they could pick him up. But look at that. Zeke Naji's contract, $8 million. It's not like he costs a lot, but teams just don't want long-term money right now.
He's taking 4% of the cap. Like,
which is nothing. It's not a lot, but
like, come on, man. The Zeke Naji deal isn't going to make or break you if you're another
no.
team. I get it. I get why they wouldn't want it, but like, he's going to be taking 4 or 5% of the cap. Like, that's not even, it goes down as his money is going up. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So, like,
No,
come on, man. That's easy.
I'm not saying it's a bad deal, but
no, not you, but just other teams not wanting to take. I think it, like, I understand why they don't want to take on long-term money, but I think it also could be a little bit overblown from the team perspective.
Sure.
If you're not wanting to take on a deal that's taking 4% of your cap space.
Teams are so worried right now about long-term money. They're so worried about the aprons and all that sort of stuff. So
they're terrified.
They are terrified. They're running scared. They're running scared. All right, let's take a look at some of the other comments that we've got coming in here. A lot of people are talking about Jeremy Grant right now in the comment section about him winding up on the Lakers or something. You know, I'm not a huge fan of Jeremy Grant's contract. It's not as awful as it looked when he first signed it, but he's not had a good season. Will his shooting numbers go up on a team that has more guys to draw offensive attention? Sure, his shooting percentages should go up, but I don't like. Is Jeremy Grant the piece that puts you over the top? Because you know the Blazers aren't going to give the Lakers a good deal on Jeremy Grant. They're going to want pieces back, significant pieces back. And I guess, Donnie, for me, it comes down to this. Let's say because you got to send salary out, if you turn Rui Hachimura into Jeremy Grant, does that make the Lakers significantly better?
Significantly, no.
Then what? Then why? Right?
I think with that, what you're hoping for with Jeremy is that he can kind of revert back to being what he was in Denver, where he was this utility defensive player, which he hasn't been so much the last few years, and is able to take a step back on the offensive end and get those easier shots, knock them down as they come his way. And I'm not sure he can't do those things, but I think you're taking a gamble, especially because it's not going to be a good deal on your side.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the challenge. And again, if you are the Blazers, we know they don't want to trade with the Lakers. They prefer not to. They prefer to trade him somewhere else. So, I mean, it becomes a tough thing to try to sort through and find a path that makes sense for all parties involved.
Yeah, and I don't know that trade, like you said, makes them exponentially better to where that's the deal that they needed to put them over the top. It's Rui is, for all of his faults, because he has some very loud faults where he just gets airheaded, spaces out on the defensive side.
Controller gets unplugged.
Yeah, basically, we saw it last night where they just threw a pass straight past him, and he didn't even see it. Like, he reacted like 5 seconds late. It was the craziest thing ever. But with that being the case, and with that context, he had a pretty good game, at least on the other side of the court. And he's asked to do things that you can't ask Jeremy Grant to do. Neither is a great rebounder, but Rui is a little bit better there. Rui's also stronger, sturdier, able to guard up a bit more, whereas Jeremy's a little bit more spry and perimeter oriented. And I think you're getting different things with these players, but not to the degree that it puts you over the top. Like, I don't think Jeremy's going to have as many space out moments as you get with Rui, but I think Rui's also been really efficient in the role that he's given, still shooting over 40% for consecutive years from three. Can Jeremy do that? Sure. I'm sure he can do it. It's in there. Will he, though? We know Rui's it's a proven commodity. I think you get better, but I don't think you get a lot better.
Yeah. And that's the problem, because the cost is probably going to be first round draft capital. Plus, there's an opportunity cost with the extra years of salary that Grant has compared to
that. Also,
Rui Hachimura.
More money, because it wouldn't even just be Rui, would it? It would be Rui and
stuff. Yeah. And more stuff.
That's another. Yeah, that's a lot.
All right, let's go here. Trinity said, additionally, a 3-team trade that lands the Spurs Patrick Williams, the Magic get Torrey Craig, and Barnes. The Bulls get filler and draft compensation. So Harrison Barnes in exchange for Patrick Williams. I mean, I don't mind flipping Barnes for Patrick Williams if I'm the Spurs. The Bulls giving up Torrey Craig and Patrick Williams. But what is the fill? Like, everything would be determined by what's the filler and draft compensation going to Chicago, because they don't have incentive to do that right now. And obviously it would have to be stuff coming from the Magic. The Magic get a couple of wings that maybe they could use to help them. I mean, they're already so good defensively. I think if anything, the Magic probably could use another guard, but I don't hate this. I like this the most for the Spurs, just turning a veteran into a younger player. Now, that said, you'd have to be a believer in Patrick Williams, who now has a long-term contract with the Bulls. There's a reason why they're potentially already looking to move him. So if the Bulls are in on Patrick Williams long-term, I like getting a younger player like this, but I don't know that that's a certainty either in this type of trade.
Yeah, and I also think Barnes has been good for the Spurs.
Yeah.
I think he's played within his role. He's not somebody that needs an outsized role or needs the ball to create. He's just a plug-in guy, and I think he's been admirable with the Spurs so far. And I'm not sure that they're getting much better in the short term. You could argue long-term value, of course, but I do like that for the Magic because the Magic are not giving up anything, right? What would that filler be?
Yeah, there would have to be something of significance that would be going out to Chicago there.
Yeah.
I do want to note this super chat that came in. Thanks for T to God said the championship move to really contend is Lakers trading Rui, Gabe, Max, JHS, Wood. Well, that's a lot of pieces for Jeremy Grant and Robert Williams. Okay, now of course there would have to be draft capital added in there, but then you'd be gambling on Jeremy Grant being the right fit long term and Robert Williams being healthy. The ultimate gamble. The health of Robert Williams. talk about rolling the dice there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think the best ability is availability, of course, but if they could get Rob out there and playing, man, that would be so nice. That would be so nice on this team. But I can't in good faith deal and make this deal with so much expectation being on Rob and going out there. Like it's just hard. It's a tough pill. You also are giving up that's a lot, man. Gabe and Max. Like Max has been pretty good lately. Gabe is your only other ball handler on this team, which does matter because that's part of the reason why the Lakers offense has plummeted into the ground lately is they don't have creation. And for just on that topic, for all of his warts, one thing D'Angelo did do was he put players in positions to be successful on the offensive end. He looked for Dalton. He looked for AD consistently. We don't really have that when we go away from LeBron or AR for times. And the organization, it hasn't been the same recently. So I think we need to be targeting that or something like that back if we are going to be giving up 3 rotation players. And then on top of the fact that you probably need to send how much drafts compensation in this?
Yeah, that's just it. Portland would want draft capital.
They're gonna want I think they want both firsts to get this done. I'm not gonna lie to you. 1 first at least and a bunch of seconds. They're gonna want something that I don't feel good about because I think the point is I think you still need to make another deal to get a guard because you will literally have no guards on your roster.
Yeah. And Jeremy Grant would have to handle the ball quite a bit.
Shake is your guard, and I'm not sure he can be your third guard.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Here, I don't want to talk about this real quick. Trevor gaining weight. No, actually. First of all, thank you so much for the kind words. But I want to actually pat myself on the back. I have been very locked in on my diet over the last couple of weeks here. And over the last probably week and a half, I'm actually down 3 pounds. So I'm going to pat myself on the back for that. I'm continuing to work towards my goal of getting back down a bit here. But no, I'm actually losing weight. So thank you.
That's good.
Yeah.
You could say they say that you're gaining weight. You could just say you're gaining muscle. That's what.
That's right. That's right. It's all the all the curls and the push-ups and all of that stuff that I've been doing, I guess. All right, let's go here. This is easy. Felipe, why didn't the Lakers offer the MLE to Derrick Jones Jr.? Because they didn't have the MLE. That's why they didn't have it to offer. He was not on LeBron's list of players that he would take less for. So.
Yeah, I wanted to show you this one. T to God followed up and said, start LeBron at the point and have Reeves run the second unit.
A lot of people go to that, but because that's what they did in 2020 was they had LeBron as the point guard on the offensive end, but they had players who could defend point guards on the floor. They had KCP, they had Avery Bradley, Caruso coming off the bench. You had other guys because that becomes the issue. Who's defending the point guard? Not so much. LeBron can be the initiator on the offensive end, although he doesn't want to be. I mean, it's why they won the championship and immediately went and got Dennis Schroeder because LeBron does want to have to do that all the time. He doesn't want to have to initiate the offense.
Yeah, I don't. we don't have 2020 LeBron anymore either, where he wasn't even trying to do it then so much, just kind of got pushed into it as that was the best look that they had. Because the year prior, the whole thing was, oh, yeah, we're going to get a bunch of ball handlers. Lance Stevenson, we got Alonzo, we're going to bring a bunch of guys in. So LeBron, like Magic was literally saying they didn't want him handling the ball as much, which is kind of funny, but that's kind of how things were. And they've been aligned with that for years. And they've been trying to shuffle in and out a bunch of guards. But my thing with this is that if anything happens to either of these guys, when they miss any time, you don't have a third player.
Yeah.
So I would like to at least have an optional third player. That's what my thing is with this.
Yeah.
And even if you bench Reeves, you still have to make sure that it's not even so much that you need to have these guys staggered. They have to get a good amount of minutes together too, because they're two of your best players.
Exactly.
It's like it's just really tricky. And that's why Gabe slots in and sometimes gets 25 minutes, because you just need somebody that could literally dribble the basketball.
What a concept. Someone who can dribble the basketball. That's what the team needs.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk a little bit about this. The Heat ramping up Jimmy Butler trade efforts. This is coming from Brian Windhorst. That they are intensifying their efforts since Jimmy had his meeting with Mickey Harrison on Thursday. There's an uptick in discussions revolving around Jimmy Butler. The Heat shifted into a new gear after the meeting, and even had a team on Friday call me and say, hey, this team is trying to dump some salary. Hey, we're just talking with a couple of teams who were trying to dump salary. And all of a sudden we had to end our phone calls and go do something bigger. I thought, what's going on? I don't know, but I speculate that it has to do with Butler, and not just a direct Butler trade, but a 3 or 4 team trade. So you've got teams potentially looking to move off of salary in order to perhaps facilitate a Jimmy Butler trade. And we're just talking about teams that are above the second tier apron needing to drop below that in order to aggregate salaries in a trade. So it sounds like there's some things starting to be put into place. Nothing done right now, but in order to get Jimmy Butler off of the Miami Heat, which is certainly interesting. This would be, again, the most fireworks worthy trade of the trade deadline would be Jimmy Butler going somewhere. And it sounds like some puzzle pieces are starting to get moved behind the scenes to maybe make something happen.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Do you think he's still on this team post the deadline?
For as much as we've been hearing they are, they're preparing to hang on to him and all of that. I don't think so. I just think they're going to find a way to move him.
Think so? They're gonna just, no matter what, get him out of there?
I think they have to. I mean, even the players on the team have been saying we don't want him back. That's the word that's been coming out. I think you need to find a way to get him off the roster, and they can't send him home because the NBA's policies. So I know he came out, he's been playing and everything, but I just think they're gonna find some way to. I think there's enough teams that want him. And does Jimmy come off of the whole it has to be Phoenix thing because Phoenix is going to pay him? If he's willing to go somewhere else, that might open up some opportunities. And I think there's enough teams that would be motivated to go get him that something could happen there.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's unfortunate the way this has all gone and turned into such a messy divorce for the Heat and Butler because of the tenure he's had there. I think largely being really successful. They didn't win a chip, but they at least pushed for 2 and were there and had some great moments in the playoffs. But really unfortunate this is kind of going the way that it is. And hopefully for both their sakes, they're able to pull off a deal. So if that's the case, though, I do wonder if I'm sure they've heard offers, obviously, over the course of the last month or whatever. Do you think if push comes to shove, because you think that they'll try to get rid of him regardless, they'll go back and kind of rebuff those talks and say, how do you feel about this trade now? Can we do this deal that we talked about a month ago or whatever?
Yeah, I think they will revisit things, certainly, with Jimmy Butler. They'll revisit whatever conversations they need to in order to explore different opportunities, different landing spots for him. So yeah, I do think that's something that makes some sense for the Heat to just continue to push the envelope, see what they could find. Yes, the Phoenix Suns want him. Yes, they want to deal Bradley Beal to get him, but it's hard to see if that's going to work out. I think ultimately when push comes to shove, if it's presented to Jimmy, hey, you can either stay with Miami or you can go to Milwaukee or you can go to Memphis or you can go to this team. Phoenix is not an option. Once it's the deadline is looming, I think cooler heads will prevail and he'll say, okay, fine. And he'll relent. Right now, it's, oh, no, I only want to go to Phoenix because he knows Phoenix will pay him. But once push comes to shove, if Phoenix is simply not an option, I think he'll relent and be willing to go somewhere else.
Well, with that being the case, I know we've talked about how, you don't want to trade him somewhere he doesn't want to go, because then you could get the other side of Jimmy where he's not bought into what you're doing. If we hit to a point where it's like, you know what, a team's willing to take a flyer on him, let's say Memphis, because we thought he would be a good fit there. Do you think he goes there and performs and shows what he could do? Or do you think he just kind of just sandbags it and is like causing drama and all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, if he really wants to the word was that he hasn't even started to make things uncomfortable on the Heat just yet. Mm-hmm. I think Jimmy is going to play every card he has to try to force his way out of Miami. But at some point, it's going to be best for all parties involved to find a deal. Will Miami get what they want? Will Jimmy get to the place he wants? All of that is certainly up in the air. I just think all those parties they've got enough incentive to where they'll budge enough to get something done. Jimmy, Miami, whoever's trading for him, everybody will budge just enough to get something done.
Yeah, because I don't know that he's going to wind up in Phoenix, because it's just a really hard trade to make with the limited assets Phoenix has to incentivize somebody else to take on the Beal deal. And so he may have to go somewhere that he's maybe not even thinking about, maybe not even talking about. Like he may let's say the Clippers took a chance on him or something. Like, would he go there and be Jimmy Butler and make the most of that situation, despite being upset about the fact he didn't get to go where he wants to go? I think is a serious question and concern that whatever team tries to trade for him would have to think about. But if they're so dead set on getting him out of there before the deadline hits and they're just going to make whatever deal happens, you have to consider that as well.
Yeah, for sure. And No Strays says, Beal said in an interview the Bucks tried to trade for him. Yep, for Chris Middleton, but he said no. Maybe Beal to the Bucks better than Middleton. Yeah, I mean, now that Chris Middleton has declined, Beal, I think, is a more attractive option. And maybe it isn't as big of a deal that Middleton will be on the way out for Beal. I mean, that was part of the problem, was Beal was like, well, no, if I'm going to go to the Bucks, I want to play with Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton to Miami, Butler to Phoenix, possible now. Maybe. But again, it depends if that's the piece Miami wants back. And going back to the Bucks side of it, kind of to come full circle on the show here, I still don't like the idea of adding Bradley Beal to the Bucks. If I'm that, it feels like a desperation move rather than really finding the right fit if I'm Milwaukee.
I feel like they got their new guard star player last year. I don't know that they need to go get another all-star guard.
Yeah, that was before they got Dame that they were looking at Beal.
Yeah, before then. And if that's the case, where they want to make a trade, they want to move off Middleton for whatever reason, that's fine. But I think they maybe should look elsewhere for another player that fits their needs more directly, because I don't know that that's Beal. I think, like I said earlier when we talked about this, I feel like Beal is making a deal just to make a deal.
Yeah.
Just because.
Agreed.
So.
Agreed. All right, everybody. We'll wrap things up there. We do appreciate everybody for joining the show today. Went live, decided to go through to talk through all this stuff with everybody. And we appreciate all the support that we've received here on the Basketball Bulletin. If you haven't subscribed yet, please make sure you do subscribe to the channel. And again, thank you guys. We've been blown away by how many people have been coming here, checking out all of our trade content, everything else that we put out as well. You guys are awesome. So if you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, please make sure you hit it and then hit that like button as well. We'll get a like spike in. But thank you again, everybody. Till next time. See ya and stay safe.